You ain't going to see it in the aircraft.
All right. Another entry we've got in here has to do with the kinds of support you could get from the Air Force, like Puff the Magic Dragon, or how did that work? Or did you see it being used, I guess, is the...
I was pulling guard duty one night when about 13 miles out, one of our bases was getting hit, and almost like the Aurora Borealis. I mean, it's just lighting up the sky. And from time to time, you see tracers going off and going high in the sky. And they put in an arc light out there, amongst others, B-52 strike. And you could literally feel the ground shake where we were. And then they, at one point during the night, brought in Puff, the Magic Dragon. And when he'd fire, we could hear him. You could see it first, and then later you'd hear him. And it was like a garden hose to the ground, reddish orange. But it looked funny because he's flying around, so the hose looks like it's bent. It can't be that way, but it looks that way from it. And he's shooting at the ground, and you see the tracers bounce off and bounce up, and that far away. And you wouldn't think, I mean, many times when I'm out flying, you'll hear them come across and they'll say, this is whatever, from 35,000 to ground, impacting in grid square, blah, 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 from now till such and such a Zulu. And they're putting in an arc light strike. Mm-hmm. And you just can't fathom what it is. But when you're 13 miles away and you can hear the 20 millimeter Vulcan Cannon on that thing shooting, and you can see the tracers, and you can feel the ground shake from the arc light, and you wonder, how does anybody survive out there? I mean, Ben Hepp, I talked about it being under siege. I can remember going back after it wasn't under siege, take Doc up to investigate, to check the mess hall to see it's clean and all those kinds of things. And so I'm in and out of there a lot. It looked like moonscape around that place, except on the moon, there's no water in the craters with algae. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing out there. I mean, you see World War II, there's a dead tree in the no man's zone. I mean, there's nothing out there. And yet we'd arc light it, and as soon as they were through arc lighting, they're back to fighting. How? Mm-hmm. I've no clue. I mean, I've said to you before, I take my hat off to the Vietnamese. I don't know how the North Vietnamese ever managed to fight, keep up a struggle, resupply their people, even managed to live in the jungle. And I don't know how.
Yeah. Well, the arc lights did do a lot of damage, and so did the miniguns on the Puffs and things.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the Puff, was that a propeller plane?
Usually, well, when I was there, they had a mix of old DC-3s. Mm-hmm. Of course, they've got a number of different nomenclatures.
Yeah.
Those and C-130s. Now they're all C-130. Well, it's not true. The Air Force has some C-20s, or the Special Forces has some C-27s now, which is a two-engine job that they use for gunships, and it looks like a C-130. But the one I was observing was a C-130, and he was going to town. I mean, if you can imagine, they mount a 105 semi-automatic gun on the side of that thing and fire it while they're flying around in a circle. Oh. I mean, I can't wrap my brain around it. I can't. A Vulcan Cannon, 20 millimeter Vulcan Cannon, fires somewhere around 6,000 rounds a minute. It's like our minigun going off. Mm-hmm. It sounds like you're ripping cloth. They mounted one over at Camp Holloway. This was the aviation base I was telling you, Army aviation base on the other side of the hill. They mounted one on top of one of their bunkers, on top of one of their guard towers. When they fired it, the recoil was so bad that the guard tower fell over. It looked like timber! It just tilted over, fell down on the ground. When they first started mounting them on the Cobras when I was there, Cobras were fairly new. We had a lot of Charlie model gunships, but Cobras were fairly new. And they mounted a couple of these Vulcan cannons on the Cobras. They only fired so many rounds at that point, and they were checking the airframes for cracks. Mm-hmm. And if they fired too many rounds when they were on a gun run, it stopped the aircraft in midair.
Oh. Powerful stuff.
They'd come down flying, and because they're on a gun run, they'd fly faster than they're supposed to. They'd get right up to V&E, velocity not to exceed. They'd get right up to the edge of that. Fire the gun, they'd slow them down. Like popping flaps and putting down your landing gear on a fixed wing. It'd just slow them up.